Hello everybody, welcome to JuicyMaters Living. Hi folks, this is the September 1st version of JuicyMaters Living, or September 1st episode I suppose. Not used to this TV stuff. Anyway, JuicyMaters Living, which is the voice of JuicyMaters.com, is broadcast every Thursday at 7 p.m. And here we are, 7 p.m. on Thursday. If I act like I don't really know what I'm doing, guess what? I don't. But we're going to stumble through this. Hopefully, y'all are going to learn a little bit about yurts tonight, and I'm going to learn a little bit about things y'all would want in future shows. Now let me tell you a little bit about how this show is going to work. I'm going to sit here and tell you a little bit about yurts. Tonight we're going to talk about the legal aspect of putting up a yurt. That seems to give folks a lot of trouble. And if you go to JuicyMaters.com, if you're seeing this on Ustream, if you go to JuicyMaters.com, you'll go to the live broadcast, and there's a chat section below there. I don't see the chat on Ustream if you're watching this on Ustream, but if you watch it on the blog, I'll see the chat. And if it works, which it didn't last week, I'll answer your questions. Eventually this will be where you can actually call in. It'll be a call-in show, just like talk radio. But for tonight, you're going to ask your questions in the chat section. If you scroll down below the player on the JuicyMaters.com page where you can see the show, scroll down just a little bit. You'll see the chat. You'll see the box below the player. There's two tabs at the top of that box. One says social stream and the other says chat. Click on the chat tab and ask any questions that come up when I'm telling you about the legal aspects of yurts. Or just say hi. Give me a name and where you're from and ask the question. Say hello. Disagree with me and we'll discuss that. If something else, if you feel like there's a different way to do something. JuicyMaters.com, if y'all visit regular, you know it's about yurts and homesteading and cooking and pretty much the mental ramblings of a slightly deranged redneck boiled peanut salesman from southern Appalachia. That would be me. Each week the show is going to focus on a specific topic. Now that doesn't mean we can't talk about other topics. If we're talking about yurts and the legal aspect of getting a yurt erected tonight, and one of y'all had visited the cooking section and made that Paula G's poppy seed cake and want to give me a hard time for putting recipes on that have so many calories and will make you fat so easy, well, go ahead. But each show is going to have a focus. Like I said, tonight's going to be on yurts. And just for anybody that's interested in the homesteading, next week that's going to be our topic, is homesteading. The legals of yurts. The very first problem you're going to have, now let me back up. The very first challenge you're going to have, I don't see any problems. All I see is challenges. And building a yurt presents some legal challenges. The fact is, planning and zoning people don't like yurts. It's not that they're bad, the planning and zoning people I'm talking about. It's not that they're bad people, it's that they've learned to do things in a certain way. And us yurt type folks, we are square pegs that don't fit in their round hole. They want you to walk in with a set of plans. The set of plans needs to show what kind of materials you're going to use, and basically they want to see a set of plans that says you're building something to code. And I got news for you. There is nothing code about a yurt. That does not mean that a yurt is an inferior structure. That means it's a different structure. It's different in almost every way you can imagine until you start talking about plumbing and electrical. From a code-built, stick-built house or a brick house. Foundations can be very similar. Mine's piers, concrete piers in the ground, wooden post on top, round deck on top of that. Right up until you said round deck, you didn't upset the planning and zoning people. When you start talking about a round deck for a house, they start scratching their head and wondering what in the world they're going to do with you. So you can go in with a brochure from, pick a yurt company, Pacific Yurts. I like to push Pacific Yurts. I live in a Pacific Yurt. I love living in a Pacific Yurt. After a few years here, I can look back and wouldn't change a thing. Well, I would change a couple of things in how I built it, and we'll get into that in some other shows. I would do some different things on the inside, but for the most part, I am 100% happy with my yurt, and I am 1,000,000% happy with the fact that it's a Pacific Yurt. But anyway, when you walk into the planning and zoning people and you've got a brochure from Pacific Yurts or any other company, first thing is you're going to get looked at like you're really, really strange. When you walk out, they're going to snicker. There goes somebody wants to live in a tent. Well, yeah, okay. So I live in a tent. My tent happens to have hardwood and ceramic tile floors, but I live in a tent. I've heard some people around here where I live refer to it as the circus tent up on the mountain. I don't care. But anyway, they're going to snicker, and they're going to see that there's nothing to code, and they're going to tell you, you can't get a permit for that. And they're right. You will not get a permit to build a yurt as a primary residence. Legally, a yurt is a temporary structure. So how do you build a temporary structure and have all the amenities that you've got to have permission to get? Well, if you're really going off grid, if you don't need the electric, if you don't need anything coming in from the outside, just build the yurt. That's all. You can go to my website and you can see how to do foundations and kit erection, all that. Just build it. They can't do anything. It's a tent. They said so themselves. It's a tent. Now, if they can't tell you that you can't pitch your Boy Scout tent for 2 weeks, how can they tell you that you can't pitch your 30-foot diameter circus tent for 2 years? It's a tent. So pitch your tent. Most of us aren't going that far off grid. I'm certainly not. So now we have things that have to come in from the outside. Electricity, for example. Electricity is going to be the first problem you've got. You cannot get electricity where I live, and this is pretty well common all over the place. You cannot get electricity if you don't have, you cannot get a permit to build a yurt if you don't have electricity. And you cannot get electricity unless you jump through a couple of hoops. These are the easy hoops. Where I live, if you want to build a house, before you can get a temporary electrical permit from the health department, you have to prove that your septic system meets standards. Now, I built where my house had burned, so I already had a septic system in. But there's a way around that. Some of you are going to do composting toilets. Some of you are going to do incinerating toilets. Health departments don't approve those. I was going to put an incinerating toilet in my yurt, and I went to the health department. She said, yeah, you can put an incinerating toilet in, but you have to have backup in case it fails. You have to be tied into a septic system or a sewer line in case the incinerating toilet failed. I looked at her and I says, well, why don't I have to have a backup in case the septic system or the sewage line fails? Why don't y'all require me to have an incinerating toilet as backup? If you've got to back up an incinerating toilet if it fails, why don't you have to back up the other in case it fails? She said, Bob, I don't make the law. I just tell you what it is. Go talk to them in Atlanta. Well, that conversation might actually happen on down the road. But she said, look, you had a house there that burned. I know there was a septic system. Let me pull the card on that address and see what you had. So she goes back and she pulls the card and she says, you're in luck. You've got a 750-gallon tank. You've got enough drain line to build a house. Here's your permission. Now go get a permit to build the house. That's where the fun started. Because I was going to do this the right way. Planning and zoning says, nope, you're not going to build a house, Bob. Not by just getting a permit based on what you're showing us. I said, what do you mean? He said, nothing's to code. I said, no, it's not to code. It is better than code. It beats code. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, you don't like my insulation. I don't have R19 insulation, right? He says, right. I said, I've got an insulation that exceeds R19. I've got the same insulation that is on the space shuttle between the skin and the heat tiles. It's double-sided bubble wrap with foil on both sides, and that does a better job of retaining heat in the winter and reflecting heat in the summer than R19 insulation. It doesn't have an R factor. That's the problem. They don't know how to work with square pegs when they have round holes, and their round hole says R factor. Reflective, there's three types of heat. Heat moves three ways. There's radiant heat, there's transmitted heat, which is conductive. It's conducted through a material, and I forget what the other one is. Well, conductive heat is what R factor addresses. How fast does heat move through a material? And when you're talking about yurt insulation, you don't have conductive heat protection. You've got reflected heat. Sun hits the outside in the summer, that foil on the outside reflects it back. You keep it warm on the inside, that foil on the inside reflects it back inside. It doesn't get cold. It beats their R19, but that's not how it fits with them. Anyway, you talk to them for a while and you might get the same answer I did. Bottom line, Bob, you can get a permit. It's going to take you a year and $10,000 in legal fees, but you can get a permit. And I said, look, we're in a small county. There's 30,000 people where I live. I said, we're in a small county, and every government employee here depends on an election to keep their job. I said, you don't get your job by being elected, but your boss is the county commissioner, and he gets elected. And I can promise you that I will raise so much hell, he'll be out of a job next election, and so will you. I said, I want to build a house, my house, on my land with my money. I'm not building it to sell where somebody else is at risk if I don't do it right. All I want to do is build a place to live, and it's none of your business what I build or how I build it. The upshot of it is, if you live in a small county, if you have elected officials, local officials that are very close to the public because of the size of the county where you live, you have a good shot of them turning their head. You have a good shot of them saying, just go build it, hush. But they still have to give you a permit to get the electricity. Two ways to do that. What I did, I bought a travel trailer, 29-foot travel trailer, and put it on the lot to live in while I was building the house. And because of the trailer, I was able to get a temporary permit, a construction permit. Ran the trailer and all my tools for building the yurt off of that temporary power pole. Then, when I wanted electricity to the yurt, I got a trailer permit, a permanent trailer permit, and I mounted my meter base instead of on the wall of the yurt with a power panel on the other side of the wall. I mounted it like you would for a regular trailer, a big live-in trailer, 14 by 80 or whatever, or a double wide. And they gave me a permit for electricity for that. Then I just ran my panel off the back, because all they care about, all the power company cares about, is you've got a permit to put them, for them to run electricity to the meter base. Excuse me. The meter base is on the outside of the trailer. It's on the outside of the yurt. It's mounted on a post. It's not mounted on the yurt. They run power to that, and what you do off the back of it's none of their business, and they don't care. So I got a trailer permit. Now, since I've done that, I've been thinking everybody can't do that. So here's how you get around not having a permit for a primary residence construction if you want electricity for your yurt. You don't tell them you're building a yurt. You've got 5 acres out in the country, and you want to be able to work at night. You're going to keep horses, or you're going to keep livestock.